This is a new and strange environment at first, suddenly finding yourself in orbit.
I'm Neville Andrew Mera, and this is Never Normal, a show about breaking free from the boring default plan and living life on your terms instead. This is a very special episode of Never Normal. I have two guests. Serenity Pearlman is an 11-year-old originally from California who is now blogging about her life living in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria. Joining us is Serenity's dad, Shane. Shane is the CEO of Modern Tribe, a fully remote digital agency with team members all over the world. I'm a new dad. Obviously, you've been at this for a little over a decade now. And both of us, prior to that, were sort of more nomadic, traveling around. I think there's sort of an impression that it's like almost like a hedonistic thing to do, a kind of like a single man's game. Obviously, women travel too. But like there's this impression that it's, like you're a guy, you're maybe like a backpacker, you're traveling around the world. And it's like a phase that you need to go through and then get it out of your system. And usually, like, especially in the old days, right, if you were traveling and working, maybe you did a few shifts at the youth hostel, or you were a bartender, or you help people learn to scuba dive. And so with your company, with Modern Tribe, right, you're not only remote yourself and being able to work from anywhere, but you hire people who are remote. You're kind of helping write the book, so to speak, on remote work. And then, I think you and I are both advocates for remote work and the movement, and, we kind of go to the same conferences and things. So that's all, again, from like a business perspective, but you're going through it now, as a family man, and you've made this work. And that's what I think is so interesting, because I don't think you're just sort of some, weirdo who wants to live in different places and work remotely. I think you're really just like a few years ahead of what I expect will be a wave of people doing something similar, right? With the pandemic, we've had a lot of companies go either remote first or at least become more accepting of remote work. And we're seeing more and more, like office workers who are able to do their work from anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's really important to separate between the nomad culture and community and location independence. They're in overlap. And there's a lot of value in both communities. Like my wife doesn't understand when I get frustrated when somebody tries to call me a nomad. And I'm like, we don't move. We live here. We're embedded in the community. We pay, exactly. You just we pay taxes. We go to school. We just do it where else than where she was born. And so for me, like the value of remote work has always been the idea that I could work from anywhere, not because I want to shift and move and explore constantly. That's never been my personal drive. I've always been more interested in the idea that we can go to a place and stay there for a real period of time, to the point where we break through the cyclical tourism barrier. I definitely call us at a minimum short-term residents, if not long-term residents. Like we usually lay root.
I'm in Valencia in Spain, and you are in Spain also, but not on the continent of Europe. Where are you today?
We're in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria, the little Canary Islands. They are closer to Africa than Spain, but they're still in Spain. Very cool. And you are 11 still? Did I get that right? Yes,
okay.
I'm 11. I turned 12 in 2 months.
Cool.
Yeah, we're almost there.
And how long have you lived in Las Palmas now?
I moved maybe a month or two, a few months after my 9th birthday. Mm-hmm. So I've been here for almost 3 years.
Yeah, two and a half, coming on 3 years soon. Yeah, 2.5 years.
Wow. And you moved from the States, from California, was it?
From Santa Cruz or Capitola.
Yeah, California. Which is where? For people who have no idea where Santa Cruz is.
It's in the northern part.
Yep.
Near
San Francisco?
Yeah, near San Francisco, and it's really much colder there.
Almost 3 years. That's a long time, but I imagine you still remember life back in California. Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask this. What do you feel is kind of the biggest difference from living in California to where you live now in Las Palmas?
There are a few big differences. Number one is it's really hot here.
Yeah,
and it's like only a tiny bit after December, and I'm in a sundress. Mm-hmm. Also, you speak Spanish here.
That's true. That's a big difference.
And it's a private school.
That's true.
Last one was a public
from
school.
Public to private school. That was a big difference.
And I'm now learning 4 languages instead of 1.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so English is your native language, obviously. Of course, you're learning Spanish. And 2 more?
Yes, I'm learning French. Dad's family is French. And I'm learning Chinese.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. And in school, do you speak mostly English with your teachers and classmates, or mostly Spanish, or how does it work?
So the normal classes, such as math, lengua, computer class, and stuff, are split in between English and Spanish. Like in Spanish, I have math, like lengua, music, and computers. And in English, I have robotics, which is like Legos, but with robot parts.
You get to take a robotics class?
Yes.
We definitely didn't have a robotics class when I was a kid. That's awesome.
But it's
I gotta
with
say, I'm
Legos.
jealous. So classes are in a mix of English and Spanish depending on the class, but it's not only the language classes.
Exactly. So every year they elect which class is in English, which class is in Spanish. So for a year, you might take biology in Spanish and math in English, and then it'll switch the following year.
The 3 years I've been here, I've always had math and lengua in Spanish.
Oh, okay.
And I've always had robotics. I've only had 2 of the 3 years I was here, but that's always been in English. Computer classes changed with the teachers.
Okay.
It only changes if you change the teachers.
Got it.
Because the teachers, they either have in English or in Spanish.
That makes sense.
I only have 1 teacher who sometimes speaks both in art class.
Are all the schools, maybe I don't know if you know this, but are all the schools in Las Palmas like what you described, or is that something special at the school you go to?
Well, I know that not all schools learn Chinese, and you can either choose French or German. I think there are a few public or private schools, but I think they all wear uniform. And
Well, that's true. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
All the schools here wear uniforms, public or private. Where in California, that definitely wasn't true. Huh?
No, I never wore a uniform there.
What do you think? Do you like not having to worry about what clothes to wear for the day, or do you miss having the ability to wear whatever you want?
Sometimes. I like that I can either choose to be warmer or colder. Here it's more difficult when it gets colder because we have a dress uniform where if you get cold, you wear tights, which aren't very warm.
And what about your classmates? Are they mostly students from other countries like yourself, or are they people who grew up in Las Palmas, or is it a mix?
Well, most of the people there are at least from Spain. I think there's one boy from Valencia, and I think a few from Madrid and stuff. But most of them are from here. I think there was one girl that was a year older when I was in 4th grade that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
That was from England, I think. But I only saw her like a few times.
Right, but that's the exception. Almost all the kids are local kids or a couple Spanish imports.
Wow. And so how was that for you moving to a new country? And it sounds like you're interested and learning a lot of languages, but usually it's a little bit hard when you first start. I mean, I live in Spain now too, and I haven't learned a lot of Spanish yet. And for me, it's hard to make friends with people if they don't speak English, because I just only have so many words in Spanish and it's like hard to make a full conversation. How was the process for you of making friends? Did you find it easy or difficult, or did it get easier?
Well, when I first moved here, I remember the teacher told a few of the girls to introduce me, and I'm still friends with them. And I think here I became friends with a few more girls that were mostly because of books and stuff that they shared the same interests from class.
Do most of your friends speak English?
Most of them do. There are a few that don't though. They aren't they aren't nationally English.
Right.
Most of them are nationally Spanish. There are a few kids I know that there are 2 friends I have their father is from England, and I have a few others that speak English that have a parent from an English-speaking country. But besides that, I only have a few friends that don't speak even a little English. I have a friend Yaruti.
That's true. Yeah.
That's because her older sister is my parents' friends.
When you're speaking with your friends, do you normally speak in English or Spanish, or do you just switch back and forth depending on who's in the conversation?
It's more back and forth. It's just how we start. Sometimes we end up speaking in English. Sometimes I join them when they're already speaking Spanish. I was on a video call with a few friends yesterday, and since there were 3 of us, we were speaking mix.
But I think a lot of people would imagine, you live in Gran Canaria, it's a relatively small island, and you've already been there for a few years now. If I was like, as a parent, if I was moving there, and even for myself, I would worry that we would like get bored or run out of things to do. Has that happened to you? Do you feel that way at all?
Yesterday, we went to this entire part of the island I've never been before in 3 years. And we've been on new hikes like every week that I've never been before. It's actually kind of big, and there are a lot of places to go to, and pretty big. And it's a pretty big city. Like they have, don't have amusement parks, but they have a water park.
Yeah.
They have water parks. They have some fun game parks, and then they have so many hiking places. We just went to a place Morgan. And I just found a place yesterday that was like with a waterfall and a whole jumping area I'd never been before.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I mean, the thing that quarantine really taught us.
You need a roof.
Well, yeah. Yeah, if you're going to get trapped in an apartment for 2 months, you need a rooftop.
And now we have an entire rooftop.
And now we have a roof. We solved that problem. But I think the thing that quarantine really made us realize was very few people take the time to be an explorer, a tourist in their own neighborhood. And if you pause long enough to look around, usually there's a ton to discover.
No, I agree. I mean, the whole quarantine experience, I think it's just made us realize how much we take for granted the ability to just walk outside and just enjoy, not something that's necessary. Like a waterfall is really cool, but it doesn't even have to be a waterfall. Just going for a walk like down the street or on the beach nearby or something like that is something that we always just assumed like you can do it any time, so it doesn't feel that like precious or whatever. And then once it was taken away, even just being able to go on the roof and see the sun was something special for a while there. And just for context for anyone listening, like we're both in Spain in different places, but we had, I think it was one of the, if not the strictest lockdown in the world for a good 2 and a bit months, right? Last year between, I think it was around April, May, I think it finally ended in June, but you basically couldn't go outside. Like the grocery stores, doctors, and maybe to walk the dog, and that was it. Otherwise, like you couldn't just go for a walk if you wanted to.
The quarantine for us started literally a week before my birthday. It was 2 days before my friends, and she'd already planned everything.
Yeah, it was mid-March. And as an adult, you could go outside, but kids were literally not allowed to leave the apartment. So neither of my kids touched the ground for 7.5 weeks.
We lived right in front of the beach, but they opened it for adults and closed it for kids. I don't get why.
That was cruel. When they opened the quarantine, they said, okay, now adults can go into the water, but kids are not allowed to. There were many tears.
I remember when that happened, and it's so frustrating and strange too, but we'll leave all the medical stuff for another conversation. And it seems like from reading your blog, you've been sort of making up for that 7 weeks by going out and exploring even more now. It seems like, though, that you've explored a good amount of the island. It sounds like there's still more and more to do and more fun things, but like, how do you find the places that you get to go to? Who gets to choose the adventures each week or every few weeks?
Sometimes you can say like, I want to go on a hike or I want to go to the beach. And then I think you guys search it up.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of Googling involved. And we ask friends. I mean, you do this too. Like every time we hang out with friends, we're like, hey, where should we go that we haven't been to? And people are like, well, have you been here? Have you done this? Have you tried that? And so we have a very long list on my phone that's been growing.
I have one friend who she even said one that I don't know where it is, and we should go with her sometime. Sophia
said we should go where?
To this national park thingy.
Oh, that'd be fun.
She said it somewhere in my Gmail somewhere. I don't know where it is, but...
And not all adventures have to be the mountains. Like, you and I have a plan around ice cream. What is it?
We're going to try all the ice cream places, and we're going to... and rate them.
Go and test every ice cream shop on the beach and decide which is the best one.
I look forward to the review blog post whenever that comes out.
Yeah, there's this Peña la Vieja, which is really good, we know, because there's literally a line all the way around the street. I've never went there because it's too long. There was literally one time I went at night when it was like almost not 8. Yeah. But we still got ice cream because there's no line. And
tell me a little bit more. I keep mentioning your blog for people listening. I'll make sure to put a link to it in the show notes. It's travelingwithserenity.com, right? And how did you start the blog? When did you start the blog? Tell us more about it.
Well, the first part to start the blog is that I really wanted a phone, and Dad said I had to buy it all by myself. So I tried to get money somehow, and I really like traveling, and I like writing. And we looked up to try to start that, and we found it's WordPress.com. He put a few $100 into it to get it and get the big background and stuff started. And then we just started writing it.
Yeah, we noticed there was when we try to go out and find things to do, we noticed there wasn't a guide to the Canary Islands that took kids into account.
Yeah, there was one that was like dads that did it, but there's not one written by kids.
Yeah, there was nothing that like a lot of at least I spend a lot of energy when we're exploring trying to figure out whether or not this would be a good activity for a kid. Serenity was like, well, I could answer that question. And I was like, yeah, I bet you could.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear it from your perspective too. Again, to the point of why I was excited to have this conversation, because we always hear like, parents say such and such, maybe it's okay for kids, or there's just no mention of kids. And I think it's really cool just to hear it straight from you.
Yeah, like we went to the charcoal island.
Yeah.
Yesterday, that was like a pretty waterfall, and we went with some kids. There was this one part that was a little hard for them to go on, so we went. But I still don't feel like they really missed out because it was freezing, and Sojourn couldn't go in anyways.
That's true. I mean, we were trying to decide. We had a group of kids from Sojourn's first grade class, and we wanted to go on a hike. And all of us were trying to figure out, can you do this hike with a 6-year-old?
And a 2-year-old. There was a 2-year-old in the backpack.
Right, and just finding that information was almost impossible. Turns out you do most of the hike with a 2-year-old, but the last 5 minutes of the hike, there's just no way.
You can do it with Sojourn if you're adventurous.
That's true.
They were a little nervous to do it, but Sojourn just climbed right up because we hike a lot of stuff.
And I'm more comfortable with the degree of risk.
Yeah, and especially if you're there and it's your kid, I think it's a little different than like a big group, and But I still think that's just really interesting that you have a chance to explore the island and then sort of tell the world about it. My feeling has always been that Gran Canaria and the Canary Islands in general are just underrated, especially coming from America. Like I traveled a lot before visiting the Canary Islands the first time, and I never really remember anybody telling me like, hey, there's these really cool islands off the coast of Africa where it's like really nice to live and beautiful weather, and it was something I discovered much later.
Yeah, the only people in America who even knew what it was is people who we told.
Yeah.
Like no one knew what it was. You can only get here from Madrid and Spain.
Yeah.
And in Europe, and I don't think anyone else knew about it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's tiny, and if you saw them, you'd think they're from Africa.
Right, but do you feel like in a place in the world that isn't very developed and doesn't have very much money and is unsafe?
No.
No, not at all. Is it pretty different from where you were in California, or is it more fairly similar?
Well, in California where we lived, they lived in a smaller town-like area.
That's true.
Outside of the big city area.
So where you live now is more of a city than where you lived before.
Yeah, well, we lived in a small beach town, and now
it's a big city.
Yeah, this is the first time she's ever lived in a city.
And before you moved, we talked about you living in California before moving to Las Palmas. Had you lived anywhere else? Because I know you traveled quite a bit as a family.
We went to a few places. We went to Barbados.
Yeah, we stayed in Barbados for a while. Oh, it wasn't that long. No, it was like, I think you were there 4 or 5 weeks.
I was about 5 weeks. That's about a month and a half.
Yeah.
About a month and a half in Barbados. We've traveled to a lot of places. We went to Japan for a few weeks, too.
Yeah, for about 3 weeks.
Japan is one of my favorite countries in the world. What was that like?
While I was 7, I know that one of the main things I remember is waking up super late, finding out there are giant fish markets open at 1 a.m.
What about, my favorite part was you and the deer. Do you remember the deer in Nara?
Yeah, there was like
Oh, you went to Nara, the bowing deer?
Around there. There was also, we went to Disneyland, and I think I fell asleep there, and I woke up, and there were like these Disney princess floats going past it.
Oh, great.
Light up glowing princess floats with fireworks.
Yeah, they had snow crab pizza, because Disney had local food, and my son still talks about the weird pizza.
Weird by our American standards, things in Japan, but I think that's part of what makes travel so fun, is to see weird and different places, and just, it doesn't mean that something's necessarily like better here or there, but just to see some other options. I really like that. Just like you want to try all the ice cream places, I like trying all the countries.
Is the food pretty similar here, Sass, or is it different?
Let's see, the common food is pretty different.
Yeah.
Common food here, let's see, papas con mojo, like potatoes with this little sauce.
Yeah.
Seafood.
Yeah, there's a lot of seafood.
A lot of seafood.
You do live on an island.
There's still a lot of seafood. I like sushi, but the mussels can get a little boring sometimes.
Yep, understood.
We went to an abalone farm a few months ago, and we posted the video about that article about them turtles. And we saw all these abalones, and I got to hold them, and the babies were moving.
Yeah,
like these little sea fish were
cool.
moving around their hands.
And I saw your post about the turtles. That seemed really cool. How does it work? So like when you go to visit a new place, do you like to sort of like take notes when you're there, or like how does a family adventure turn into a blog post? Do you have like a process for doing that?
Well, for when we go on like hikes, it's just mostly what we remember and take pictures of. But like that one, the abalone and turtle one, those were notes because it was research that she was telling that. My grandma's friend Gerson was telling us about, and I remembered that the turtles, I literally had to remember everything myself because he only wrote one note. It was don't touch, they bite, and I was literally touching them. They didn't bite me at all.
We got real distracted. It was exciting because they let us
they let me get in the tank and touch the turtles, and they talked to me about the turtles.
And they let you help with the sick turtle.
Yeah, there's one turtle. You had to put disinfectant on it and clean it.
Yeah, because they had a hook in it.
And when you post your blog posts, so you mentioned, a few questions. You mentioned that you started the blog so that you could get a phone. So what do you need to do to get the phone? How do you achievement unlocked, right? Like how do you get to the phone?
You just your very first invoice.
Yeah, I get sponsors from around here, and for me writing what they want. I have a sponsor for my grandparents.
Yes, Grandpa and Grandma sponsored a science article every month. The Cabildo.
And the Cabildo tourism people here.
Yep, the Board of Tourism.
You got the Board of Tourism to sponsor your blog?
Sure did.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool.
A million thank yous to Nacho for all your help hooking that up. That was really, really kind of you, brother. So what does the Cabildo want you to do?
They want me to write one article. No,
yep, one
article per week.
Yep.
And I get 10 euros a week.
Yep, 10 euros for every article about Gran Canaria.
Wow, that's really cool. It sounds like you're becoming sort of like an ambassador for the island with all of the interesting things that you share. I think next time I go to Gran Canaria, like I've been, I think, maybe 4 times now, and so I've seen a lot of the sort of like famous common stuff, especially around Las Palmas and like the north of the island. But reading your blog posts, I've seen a bunch of things that, as you said, like I didn't know about that they were there. So I think that'll be the first place that I check online to figure out like, oh, what cool things should I try this time that I haven't done before.
Yeah, I remember there are a few times you make plans for something like there's this Angry Bird like kids little amusement area when it has this giant kid playground. There's mini golf. Then there's like this little moving theater that goes in when the seats move, like it looks like you're going through something. And I remember we tried to plan it for the spring vacation, and it's been like 5 months, and we never got to do it.
Yeah, not all plans work out. Sometimes you got.
Yeah.
So we're still trying to do it, but since it's like a kids park, it's closed now. So we have.
Yeah, there's a biopark here in Valencia that's kind of like a zoo, but it's a little different because the animals, they can't like run away. They're not, just totally free to escape, but the way they set it up, they're not like in little cages. It's more like the people walking through are kind of like in a separated path, and the animals have like more free space, more like their normal where they would live in nature. And it sounds really exciting, and we've been planning to go for a year, but between like quarantine and then like bad weather, and then it's like super busy the day when it's nice out, and just somehow it hasn't worked yet. So I know what you mean, that like, but it's good to have a lot of different places in mind, and sometimes a few of them don't work out.
So how close are you?
A few months more.
Yeah, a couple more months. You've earned about 200 euros so far.
When I was a kid, the options for earning money on the side were, and this isn't going to help you in Gran Canaria, but we would get really excited if it would snow a lot, because all of a sudden everyone's driveway was covered in snow, and if you woke up early enough, you could like grab a shovel and go to your neighbor's house and be like, I'll clean all this snow from your driveway for $10 or $20 or whatever it was. It was like,
because it's an apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
Work. You could,
and it doesn't snow too often.
But if I helped you clean the windows, would you give?
But our deal was you couldn't earn the money from me.
I think that's a good deal.
Can I earn it from Mom?
No. We're the same thing. It's always one bucket of money.
No, you're not. She has a wallet video.
Yeah. Sorry. But you got your first.
That's funny.
It's been really cool, Neville, because to me this is sort of like, there are very few schools that teach you how to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
I found out some stuff about my dad. I didn't know he taught kindergarten. I learned that this morning.
That's true. Yeah, I did when before you were born.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, you were a kindergarten teacher?
Once upon a time, I was a kindergarten teacher for about 6 months.
Is Gran Canaria, is Las Palmas home now? Is that it? Did you sort of move there with an open-ended kind of, let's see how it goes and see if the kids like it and stay for as long as they do? Or like where I grew up in Washington, a lot of times people would move to the city for 3 years at a time or something like that because they would get an embassy appointment or like a contract with the World Bank or something.
Well, when we first moved, I remember it got like more time since we moved.
Yeah, we moved with a 1-year plan, huh?
Yeah, we moved with about 1 to 2 years.
And then what happened?
Then I wanted it to be 3 years, and now we're not sure anymore.
Yeah, it was pretty
Now
nice
it's
here.
6 years. Now, one of the main things I wanted to say for 6th grade was because there were going to be 2 big field trips in 5th and 6th grade. When in 5th grade we were supposed to go to Avila and we were supposed to go to England, and because of quarantine we didn't get to do either.
Yeah,
But I'm still might stay longer now because one thing I like about here is you can see under the water.
Yeah, you can't see. Now, the water is super clear in Gran Canaria, and yeah, you can, like, even though it's like a city beach right there, you can snorkel just right off the paseo.
So do you still consider yourself a nomad now?
It's a good question. I think there's a bit of like once a nomad, always a nomad, but I haven't even left the country in over a year now. So at some point, it becomes difficult to describe oneself as nomadic if they're not moving around. But you brought up an interesting point to sort of like where all the labels converge and all of that. And I think for me, I haven't really ever put down roots in the same way in another place of like, fully integrating with the community. I've always been sort of like 1 foot back home and 1 foot wherever I am right now. Yeah, I mean, that's part of, my whole interest in having this conversation also is like, as we were just talking about, there's this understanding that like, you can live that way for a certain amount of time. And then once you have kids or once you want to have a family or do something serious or whatever, then, okay, all that goes away. And I don't think it's practical to be, changing countries every few days or weeks or even months with a family. But then again, there's your RV friends, and there's plenty of other people who do stuff like that. So
there is a magic to have kids when you live in another country. Yours is too young at this moment for your kid to have a social nexus.
What's that?
It means, so a lot of our friends, how did we meet them, Serenity?
From the expat group.
Or parents at your school, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What you tend to find is there's a commonality that comes to having kids. Things like schedules. I mean, you got a baby, man. They dominate life. And trying to connect with single friends or friends who don't have kids, who don't understand the pattern is so hard.
You mentioned that you originally moved to Las Palmas with a shorter time frame in mind, and you've kind of extended it out a bit. Did you have a next home in mind after that? Was there somewhere particular you wanted to or that you still think about going?
We probably have gone back home to California.
We might have gone back to California. That was an option.
I didn't know about any other option. What were the other options?
Well, so we narrowed down to come here. Like, we like Puerto Rico. We like
but there are no
Costa Rica.
mosquitoes.
There are mosquitoes.
There are still mosquitoes here, but not as many.
That's true. That is a big deal.
Yeah, this is why I have a fan in my room now.
Yeah, but no. To be fair, we weren't looking. We were looking for a place to solve some parenting challenges we didn't know how to solve.
Like what?
We wanted you to understand that there are.
You wanted me to learn Spanish.
I wanted you to learn Spanish, and we knew that wasn't going to happen unless you were immersed.
You can learn Spanish in California.
I have one friend, Alina, who part of her family is Mexican, but she still knows less than me. So
right.
Of this now.
Unless you're truly immersed, I think there's a difference and the impact on your brain. That wasn't the total priority, but that was a very important one. To me, what was most important is that you understand that there is more than one view and more than one truth in the world. Like right now...
Mom has very big with that on math.
Yes, that's right. Mom.
It's difficult. She tries to explain everything to me, even though I already understand it.
That is a challenge. It's always hard when your parent or your teacher. But right now I feel like the United States, and has probably for the last 15 years, has a real problem, and that everybody is determined that only their version of the truth is the only truth.
Like what kinds?
Their view on politics, on marriage, on finances, on healthcare. Well, that's the thing. Everybody has different ideas. Some people think some people shouldn't get married. Some thinks others. Some thinks everybody can.
Everyone can get married if they want, isn't that?
That is actually only true in some places and not in others.
What do you think?
What do I think? I think consenting adults should be able to live their life the way they want. That's my opinion. But my point and what was really important to me is Julie and I were trying to figure out, how do you intrinsically help somebody grow up understanding that different perspectives is good, not bad. And the only way we could think of doing that is to have the experience of being an outsider and to have that experience of seeing a completely different way to live that's equally valid, and then have the ability to judge them back and forth and be like, well, if this is true in California and a completely different thing is true in Spain, but they're both true, how does that work? Well, your brain starts to realize, okay, it's okay for there to be different truths, and that's not something I need to like put on like a Duck Dynasty costume and charge the Capitol or...
What you're describing is sort of like a recurring conversation on this show and in my life in general, and it's something that I grew up with it so early on that I didn't even realize it was a thing until much later. And when I think back now, it's all clear in hindsight, right? So when I think back now, a lot of my friends growing up were immigrants. And I think part of the reason is because we got along for that reason, because both my parents were immigrants. And I never I didn't identify as that, and I never sought that out. But what happened was just like, you know, my mom was from one country and my dad was from a different country. And I grew up in the US. And so it was always like, you know, there's just like for you now, Serenity, it's like, you know, in America, we did it this way. In Spain or in Gran Canaria, people do it another way. And I'm sure if you went to Japan or somewhere else, you could find a third way and then a fourth way of doing even a simple thing, like, you know, how they make their food, for example, or which side of the road they drive on, or something more complicated like politics or something like that. And
it could be something like wear uniforms or not.
Right. Whether you wear uniforms or not, or how many languages they suggest you learn at school, or what age you start school.
Right.
Like both times it can be good. Like to wear uniforms, for instance, you don't have to worry about what you wear. But to not wear, I can finally wear rain boots and jump in puddles like I can't do with these clothes.
And I think what you're describing is exactly the benefit of what Dad was just talking about, and it's the idea that, like, it's not that there's one correct way. It's not like, hey, let's travel to every country in the world to figure out which is the one way that's good. It's like, oh, yeah, there's something good about this version and there's something good about that version. And if the more of them that you get a chance to be exposed to, you can sort of pick and choose what you like and what works best for you.
What I basically mean is that if, you know, like sometimes you see a situation and you see a kid that's having a hard time fitting in. Right? Have you ever seen that? Do you feel a little more sympathy towards them now that you've had this experience of living here and you know what it's like to not always fit in with the group?
I remember that right before we left, that my teacher assigned me to help two students. One student, which he'd come from France and he didn't speak an ounce of English, and he only learned a bit.
Yeah.
And there was another one who was my friend before, but she had more problems learning and she was in the special needs class. Mm-hmm. And I'd actually already known her from junior guards and from dancing, but I helped her get along and she became in our friend group now, like that's during patio and stuff.
That's awesome. Man.
Or playground or recess, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
In America it was recess, here it's patio. I bet some people call it playground.
That's funny, I didn't know that.
Uh-huh. But that grows your heart. Like, that's my goal.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.